So this is going to be a pretty quick presentation. I didn't really want to get up here and talk too much, but some folks suggested last time, a few years ago, we started doing what was called Tool Time, where we would cover different tools. I think it was Steve. Is Steve here? No?
That's Steve.
Well, there's Steve.
Well,
I'll give him credit. He's the one that came up with it.
so quickly dismissed.
He's the one that came up with it. So, no, but he recommended we start the Tool Time again. And really, every single NEOISF will spend maybe 5, 10, 15 minutes just covering different tools or a tool to kind of give you an idea of what's out there, anything new, what it's used for, those different types of stuff. So for me, I'm biased, but I also promised myself that I wouldn't cover the social engineer toolkit because I've pretty much covered it here like 10 different times. So I cover my other tool that I'm writing called Artillery for this one. But if you're interested in coming up here and doing a Tool Time, again, it's 5 or 10 minutes about a tool that you're familiar with that you like to use. Feel free to come up and talk about it. Also want to pimp Nauticon 9, which is April 12th through April 15th. If you don't know what Nauticon is, it's the largest security conference here in Cleveland. It's the only security conference here in Cleveland. I mean, other than the InfoSec Summit. InfoSec Summit is different. Let me rephrase that. It's the largest hacker conference in Cleveland. And so that's April 12th through the 15th. And it's a unique experience. I think the way everybody explains it is it's the only hacker conference you can go to that has a penetration testing presentation going on while knitting is going on. So it's extremely awkward when it comes to that. And make sure we're up here. Okay. So has anybody used Artillery before at all yet? A couple? Okay. Does anybody know what Artillery is? Anybody know what Artillery is? Okay, we have quite a few. That's good. So the concept of Artillery was this. I've written a bunch of offensive tools, so a bunch of hacker tools that break into stuff and cause mayhem. So I wanted to contribute to the blue team side of the house and build a tool that also works on the defensive. So Artillery kind of spawned with, I looked at a bunch of honeypot projects. I also looked at different ways that I look at securing my systems. And so I started developing a tool that essentially acts as a combination of a honeypot slash banding system slash file integrity slash optimization and security permission checking, different things like that. And so what Artillery does is when you run it and you install it, it works for Windows and it also works for Linux. It's multi-platform. The one on Windows is getting there. I should have a new release that actually embeds the service. Right now you kind of have to manually run it. But it's working best right now on Linux. I'll have the new version probably in about a week. But what it does is it sets up a bunch of ports. And just to show you, if you go into the config, which is under the Artillery directory, here's the configuration file. Here's all the ports that it listens on by default, but you can add as many as you want to. And so, as an attacker, the first thing I'm going to do when I'm profiling a system to compromise, or multiple systems to compromise, is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to port scan it, look at what ports are open, see what's there, possibly look for some vulnerabilities, attack it, and go after it, right? So what this does is it opens up all these ports with a listener, and when someone connects to it, it sends basically a random string of BS data, anywhere between 5,000 packets to 500,000 packets to make it look like some really weird protocol, and then it just disconnects them and it bans them. So it really messes with their heads of what's actually there, and they don't have any idea what's going on, and it really stops that person from attacking that moving forward. What it also will do is it'll also basically scan your file system looking for any changes. So similar to, has anybody here used OSSec before in the past? Similar to that, it'll monitor your file system looking for changes in the file system. If there's a notification, it'll either send it to a log that you can pull off to your SIM or whatever you have, or it'll send you email notifications that file system changes have occurred. What it also will do is monitor your overall file system looking for misconfigurations that may lead to a security vulnerability. So it'll look for PHP files and making sure that you have that set up properly. It'll look through SSH files and make sure you have that set up properly. Trying to profile your overall computer to make sure that it's locked down and secured from that perspective. And then lastly, what it'll do is it'll also monitor SSH brute force attacks. So if someone's trying to do an SSH brute force attack, it detects them and automatically bans them as well. So a bunch of different features. I started writing this probably about 3 months ago. It's still in really much an alpha phase. I hope to have more of a beta out soon, but the Linux version is extremely stable. It's running on secmaniac.com, DerbyCon, penteststandard.org. All of those are basically running Artillery, and I've spent a significant amount of time and over-paranoid amount of time to make sure it's done securely. So everything's filtered and sanitized. There's no system calls being done whatsoever. Extremely locked down and tight when it comes to what you're actually pushing out there. And the socket server is very minimum. And just to give you an example of how to use it, to install it, first you check it out from my SVN repository or download the zip file from secmaniac.com. But you download it and you just run the installer. And this will go ahead and install for you. So I don't have internet access, so it's going to kind of jack up. But so now that it's up and running, it installs under var artillery under Linux, and under Windows it installs under C program files. And if I do a netstat, just to look at what ports I have open, you can see here I got a bunch of ports open now, a bunch of miscellaneous ports that look normal nature. And so as an attacker, I kind of profiled a lot of the different types of ports that are commonly attacked. So I did 3389, 1433, 5900, 135, 139, 445. Just a bunch of different ports that attackers commonly attack or scan for through port scanning. And so if you go ahead and connect to one of them, like if I go to, let me see what my IP address is. And I'll do it at 135. You can see here, it just sends a bunch of random data back, and it's random every single time, completely unique. And then it disconnects the session, then it bans me, so I'm no longer allowed to connect to that IP address. So, looks like a bunch of gobbledygook and data that might be there, so something they might want to look for and try to further attack from a different IP address. But it basically disconnects them, and they have no longer have access to the system. And so all of that is configurable in the site config. And so you have different options of, do you want to monitor the file system, yes or no? And what folders do you want? So in this specific example, var www and /etc are the main file system files that I'm monitoring by default. You can exclude specific directories that continuously change all the time. In a Linux file system, you have a significant amount of those. In Windows, you have a significant amount of those. So excluding those directories also work. You can turn the honeypot on or off so it doesn't do ports or not. You can turn off if you don't want it, if you want it to ban or not ban. You can whitelist IP addresses so that it doesn't actually ban an IP address of yours. In the next version, I'm doing CIDR notations, so you can whitelist CIDR notations as well. The code's done, I just have to test it. You can add additional ports. You can turn email alerting on or off. Right now, I have it hooking into Gmail only, so it does Gmail alerting, but with the next version, it'll support any type of Exchange server that you have or mail server. You can put that in there as well. You can have it come from whatever email address you want. Email timer, this is when, if you don't want to get spammed with every single change in your file system or every single attacker, you can have it send a bulk mail every 10 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, hour, or however long you want it. So say you have 50 people that you banned, it sends it every hour unless you know all the IP addresses that were banned. SSA brute forcing, you want to do that. Automatically update artilleries to the newest version. I also put some anti-denial of service capabilities into artillery, so it helps limit the amount of connections that a person can do per initiation. So if you're doing a distributed denial of service attack, it may not be as effective, but normally with distributed denial of service attacks, they also spam you with those IP addresses. So if you have, say, 50 concurrent or 20 concurrent IP connections from a specific IP address, it will ban those. So hopefully it eliminates a lot of the DDoS stuff you're dealing with as well. And you can throttle a lot of this on what ports you want to monitor for the DDoS type stuff. How many connections you want to allow as a max, so if you want 50 connections or 20 connections or whatever else that is. And that's pretty much it. All of the banned list IP addresses are sent here, and those are all the IP addresses that get banned, so you can remove them. You can also check out via IP tables, like all of the IP addresses that were banned that way as well. But essentially what I use this for is twofold. One is, since I have a Fortune 1000 company with 80,000 systems, it's fun to use this as my test bed. So we deploy all of these to our servers, and so internally when you go to scan, you see a bazillion ports open. They're all, it makes it makes it extremely difficult as an attacker to actually port scan or look for systems that are actually out there. It's just too much information to look for, so it makes it a lot more challenging. But I also use this on a lot of my Linux-based servers. So a lot of good stuff coming out of it. It's, again, really alpha stage. What I plan on adding is a few different things. One is I want to have a server agent model similar to OSSEC where you deploy all of the agents out that run this, but it all reports back to essentially a server that you can do reporting off of, as well as the configuration of config files remotely, all that different stuff will be hopefully in the next few releases. Additionally, I do have to rewrite a couple of small portions of it, like the file monitoring. It takes up too much memory at the time if you actually have monitoring on. When it's running, which is usually every like 5 hours or so, it will spike the CPU up about 4% or so, which might not seem a lot for most of you. And if you have 4% cycle, it only runs for about 5 minutes, but auxiliary, it has about a 0.0001 footprint on the system itself. So extremely, extremely small. Memory-wise, it takes up very minimum amount of RAM. So I'm trying to keep it as lightweight as I possibly can, make sure the efficiency's there, and keep adding a bunch of stuff onto it that doesn't cause a lot of bulkiness to it. So, anybody have any questions? There's a few. Wow, cool. Okay.
What do you look for in the file when you're looking for file changes?
Anything that changes.
So basically, alert any changes.
Any changes. The way that the actual changes work is it say you specify C:\program files. Okay. It combs through that entire directory and does SHA-512 based hashes and inserts them into basically a localized database flat file. And then if there's any modification or variance of that SHA-512, it then alerts on that, and it does a diff of the two different files and lets you know what changed in that file. So all of that gets incorporated into the email that gets sent out to you. That's awesome.
When you talked about this a couple of months ago, you said that you banned people forever.
Yeah.
So I'm curious now, it's been like several months, is the growth of the list? Is it like plateaued out?
Actually, it has. As many people as I see on like SecManiac or DerbyCon, I think I'm up to like on SecManiac. Last time I checked, I was up to like 3,300 banned IP addresses, and it doesn't jump up much anymore. So it stays about I would say 100 per week now is the map. But I was getting 1,000 or so within
Right.
1 month and 500 others. So it definitely is decreasing over time. But it definitely has been going down. So.
Why are all your files low meter?
On here?
Yeah.
Because it's my local backtrack machine. There's no access to it.
The random data that you're sending, is that possibly a placeholder for future retaliatory strike capability?
It is called artillery.
No comments. Auto destroy on is going to be the config option for that. So it actually sends a nuke to that individual's house. So, someone does have a question? That's good.
On the Windows side, is that a manual service?
So for right now, it is, yes. In the new, I'm like literally like 3 days away from finishing the service itself with the installer. And what will happen is I wrote a Python install. Basically, I wrote my own service through Python, and then I byte compile it with PyInstaller. And then so it's an executable that gets started as a normal service, and it's automatic then. So every time you reboot, auxiliary should reboot as well. I'm literally about like 4 or 5 days away from having that done. I hope to have it released, 0.3 done. I'm doing a lot of traveling, so when I fly, I do a lot of coding. I should have it done in about a week or so, to where you have the actual automatic service going. And there's a couple of kludgy things on Windows, like for example, the banning functionality only works on Windows Vista and above. I'm working on the Windows XP side. The problem is I have to write basically a TCP shim basically to block the IP addresses from the TCP stack versus actually using some sort of Windows command to do it, which would have been easier. So I'm actually having to do that, which takes time.
We'll work on Server 2000 then?
Actually, it will work 100% on Server 2000. The only thing you won't have is the banning capabilities.
Okay.
Right now. Right now. Soon. Any other questions?
Hey, Dave, how is this affecting your nightly output of set?
Set's still my baby, but I can work on 2 projects at a time, so there's no worries in that. Since I incorporated Fast Track into the Social Engineer Toolkit, it's really like one tool now, and then you have artillery. So, it's been working fine. No worries. And I just found out that I'm going to be writing 2 books now again. So, yeah.
Well, it's been nice seeing you.
Yeah.
We'll see you in a year and a half.
If anybody remembers me when I was writing my first book, it was not pretty, so didn't sleep. Any other questions? Anybody want to do tool time next week? Anybody want to volunteer ahead of time? Come on, somebody do something on tool. One of you guys has got to use a tool.
Randomly pick your name from the mailing list.
That's right. And if you don't accept, you're banned from here, so. And to get back in, you have to do some crazy weird ritual. We haven't decided yet, but, all
One
right.
thing we should say about the
But
tool
it's-
time
but it's-
is,
let's just say it's pretty low on the IP stack.
one thing we should say about the tool time is, even if you don't feel like you know it by heart, or like Dave, you wrote the tool, get up here and talk about any tool that interests you. We've had people, when we went around the first time, we had people who came up here, I think we were doing what? We were doing like 3 or 4 tools a
Yeah.
night, and most of the time, the person would get up and talk, and there'd be a tool that was totally new to them. One maybe they were experienced in, but it would